Welcome to Stop the Noise, where small business specialists cut through the clutter to hone in on practical things small business owners can do to solve business challenges and move their business forward. In today's episode, hosts Brenda Thompson and Kerry-Ann Nelson are talking with IT security specialist Damien Battersby from Proactive Technology Partners and insurance specialist Helena Kessoff from IIA Insurance about keeping your business secure online. Well, we'll start with the big picture, Damien, and the cybersecurity support report. What's the current state of play around cybercrime in Australia at the moment?
Yeah, look, in a nutshell, it's gone up. Every year it seems to go up. So I've got some stats from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, which is the government body sort of looking after cybersecurity stuff. And they have reported, this is based on last year, so reported or last financial year, a 13% increase on the previous year in reports coming in. So they had 60,500 cybercrime reports reported. Self-reported losses from cybercrime totaled more than $33 billion. So there's no doubt that cybercrime continues to be a problem for people and businesses. And that's just the stuff that's reported. So obviously a lot of people don't report, a lot of businesses don't report. So it's going to be a lot higher, but it's definitely on the increase. What we've been seeing, which will be no surprise, but fraud, online shopping scams, online banking scams have all been in the top ones reported. And again, interestingly, the professional, scientific and medical technical services industries are where a lot of the cybercrime has been happening or being focused on. And they're the sort of industries that have been under pressure with COVID to deliver and stay on top of stuff. So there's no doubt that the pandemic, has caused an increase in cybercrime. And it's definitely out there. It's definitely still a major threat.
I would love to hone in on I think a lot of small businesses go, it couldn't happen to me. So yeah. What's being reported specifically in the small business field, Damien?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And what the Australian Cyber Security Centre do is they actually do a yearly survey, and they do look at the SMB sector. So that's pretty much businesses with up to 200 employees. And so they surveyed about 2,000 people last year. And out of that number, 62% of those people said that they'd been victims of cybercrime in some way. And a lot of them misunderstood how important cybersecurity was. A lot of them were unaware that, of things like what phishing was. So only 20% people knew what phishing was. So it'd be interesting in this group of people if anyone knows what phishing is. But basically we're seeing a lot of email-based scams. So, sort of focusing on COVID-19 stuff. So scams around information with COVID-19 and, things, deliveries and that sort of stuff. Apparently superannuation scams are on the increase and really a focus for SMBs and online shopping scams and that sort of thing. So generally it's through emails. There's also been a fair reporting of people pretending to be calling because your computer's got a problem. And so the smaller businesses who don't have IT resources on hand or an IT company that looks after them can fall prey to that as well. And obviously the cyber criminal gets on the computer and then does some damage, usually hacking into their systems and installing malicious software. So the small, medium business sector certainly is getting hit with it. It's on the increase for sure.
Helena, what have you been seeing?
Pretty much the same thing. It's quite interesting to see that with work from home, a lot of companies were not equipped to make sure that their staff had adequate resources and ways to protect the data of the companies. So, for example, two-factor authentication was not available for a lot of companies. So now it's becoming more prevalent. Passwords on computers and systems, laptops, phones. And even vigilance of employees not to lose their laptop, which has crucial data for the company they work for, or their phone. So we're seeing a lot of that where clients were not aware that they needed to even discuss that with their staff. and therefore, cyber attacks happen from something so simple. Somebody leaving home, leaving somebody else at home, maybe their roommate with their computer open, no password, no security, and you don't know where the data can go from there. So very much what Damien is describing. And I've got a few claim scenarios that I'll run through later, and it's pretty much touching on every single one of them.
Yeah. I think, Damien, in the notes that you gave me earlier, you were talking about what even small businesses should be budgeting in terms of cyber protection. So
yeah,
you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so one of the questions that the survey people asked was how much money businesses are typically spending on cyber security, and the average was $500 a year, which is nowhere near enough to provide protection. And obviously that means that a lot of small businesses and even medium businesses, you think about a business with 150 employees, that's still classified an SMB in this survey, but that's a reasonable sized business, and they're turning over reasonable money. But they just weren't budgeting enough money for their cybersecurity, so they were definitely leaving themselves exposed to some of the easier scams that happen and the lower sort of the threats that are easy to protect yourself from. And I think that just comes from a misunderstanding. They think that they've got backup, and they think they've got antivirus, and that's all they need. And the reality is that these days you need layers of security, and as Helena touched on, your password protection is very important, and two-factor protection is very important. And as the business gets bigger, you need to add in the more layers of security, and unfortunately that means you do need to spend more money. And look, some businesses don't have to spend tens of thousands or whatever, but you're probably looking at least $20 or $30 a person per month to provide all the protection that you need. Everything from adequate email filtering protection to the proper antivirus, to password management. All those things cover off on the things that cyber criminals take advantage of. And
I wonder how many small businesses are budgeting that.
Oh, not many. I mean, they wouldn't be budgeting enough probably for their IT in general. So they're not certainly budgeting enough for the cyber side of things. And the unfortunate thing is that unlike, if you have a computer crash, you can get it repaired and it might cause some downtime. It's not going to be that financially damaging. But if a cyber criminal gets into your network or hacks your account, I've seen cases of, and it's increased now with people working from home. Again, as Polina touched on, you're working from home, so you're relying on that electronic communication a lot more. So people can hack accounts, they can send emails pretending to be the owner of the business. And we did see a case of a owner's account who got hacked, and the hacker informed his sort of accounts person to transfer $300,000 into a new account that he set up for a Hong Kong entity that he was apparently setting up, which this guy would never do that. Like, it's just totally out of his character. But because they were under the pump and busy and she wanted to do the right thing, she did it. And no one at any stage picked up the phone and checked with him and said, is this actually what you want? But that sort of thing is happening a lot with COVID, and particularly last year when businesses were really stressed. Yeah. Everyone was working remote. Those sort of scams are so easy for the cyber criminals to perpetrate. It was unbelievable. So, and these cyber criminals are getting more sophisticated. They're hacking systems, and they're sitting and watching email traffic, and they're learning the language that people use to try and really pretend to be that person, and then become more realistic, I guess, in the cyber event that they perform. So pretty sad.
Well, I think that we've probably really raised the awareness of how important it is, what the risks are. So I think, is it time to get stuck into the checklist of the things you can actually do, other than budgeting $25 to $30 a month per staff member, which wasn't on the top of the list, but perhaps we should be putting it there, because if you don't budget to fix things, then you can't fix things. That concludes the first part of today's session. Now it's time to open up the checklist, where Damien Polina will walk you step by step through 10 things you can do right away to minimize the risks and keep your business secure online. To download the checklist and watch the full recording, fill out the form below this video for immediate access.